course, there's a car alarm going off right now. Hey guys, Mike here from Lunch Money Comics. Today I'm at That's Entertainment in Worcester, Massachusetts. It's a crummy, rainy day. Me and the kids are looking for something fun to do, and they're having a big sale today. So let's go check it out and buy some cheap comic books. So I've mentioned this store several times on my channel in the past. It is a great place to visit when you're looking for not only comic book back issues, but for all of your hobby needs and interests. However, I hadn't actually been here in a while, so I was surprised to find they'd knocked down a whole wall and added a new room, which they called the B-side, and it's where they put their large vinyl selection as well as all of their games. They had cases full of trading card games like Magic the Gathering and a huge area for board games and role-playing games, which of course I am also a big fan of. But after checking out the new room, we went back to the A side where all the comic books are. Now this store has an amazing collection of trade paperbacks, omnibuses, and general reading material, but it's the back issues that get the most interest. They have rows of comics organized by title and volume, perfect for finishing your run, but you can also find some pretty nice key issues mixed within. Now, as you can see, most of these back issues are bagged, but not boarded. Because of that, these books are usually not in mint condition, although they hold up surprisingly well. Still, they keep the nicer books somewhere else. First up, we have Daredevil, one of my favorite titles. While I was looking for a specific issue, I always like to look at the Frank Miller run because, quite simply, there are so many great issues in there. But here I am looking at Daredevil Volume 2 because the book I was looking for is in this run. Now, this is a pretty acclaimed run by Kevin Smith and Joe Quesada, and I was very happy to find just the issue I was looking for. Now, like I said, the nicer books are kept somewhere else, and they sometimes place a photocopy of the comic in the bins like you see here, and then you just ask to see the real thing at the counter. I also like to finish whole storylines even if I have multiple copies. I only needed issues 7 and 9 to finish my second run of Hickman's Secret Wars, and was happy to at least find issue 7. Next up, we have Captain Marvel. Now, there are a few key issues here I like to hunt for, usually earlier ones involving Carol Danvers, but there's also a bit of a deep cut I was searching for, which I found here with Captain Marvel 41. It's actually a cameo first appearance of one of the Infinity Stones. Now, you will notice there are 2 copies here. Although these comics are not boarded, there are often many copies of the same issue, so you can pick and choose the ones in the best condition. While I was on the theme of Infinity Stones, I also tried finding another comic that features them, Marvel Team Up number 55, a team-up between Spider-Man and Adam Warlock that contains the first appearances of the Time and Power Gems, but unfortunately, it looked like Thanos beat me to it. Then it was time to hit the X-Men books. Of course, I couldn't leave without doing that. It's worth pointing out that I left my camera mount in the car, and it is very hard to go through unboarded comics with only one hand. The struggles of making YouTube videos. But there were only a few books I was actually looking for, and they featured Gambit, and here's one of them right now. So here's a bit of a pro tip, guys. When you find yourself in places like this with organized comics, always check the miscellaneous boxes, because these boxes are often overlooked and sometimes contain absolute gems. So you see, we have some great Bronze Age monster books, we have a great Avengers annual with Silver Surfer on there, and Marvel's Masterpieces art book, reprints of Golden Age Marvel titles including Marvel Comics #1 with some Alex Ross art. But it was this book with the name of my favorite comic writer that caught my eye. Never seen it before, had to pick it up. Now, I have to show you guys, they certainly have more than modern books. They have a ton of Silver and Bronze Age comics, which you can get at a great price if you're trying to fill in your older runs with non-key issues. You see a huge run of Thor here. Also, they have a ton of Silver Age Superman. Now, most of these back issues go for between $3 and $10. This is before any sales they have, but they also have general dollar bins, which are always worth a quick peek. But the absolute best stuff is kept behind a glass case at the front of the store. There were some amazing books in here, including this House of Secrets 92. It definitely caught my eye, and with the sale it would have been around $800, which I actually think is a good deal had I not bought some other really big books recently. But I did find one more comic here to add to my haul, a great Spider-Man book I've wanted to add to my collection for a while. Alright guys, quick little trip. I got some cool comic books, the kids got some stuff as well. Everyone's happy, I think. Time for lunch, then we'll go home and I'll show you guys everything I got. So there you go. That was That's Entertainment in Worcester, Massachusetts. They actually have a couple of different locations, both of which I'd featured on my channel in the past. And I love this Worcester location. Not only is it the bigger one, which they just made bigger, but it's a fantastic place to go to when I'm working in the area, when I want a little Lunch Money Comics lunch break, hunt through some back issues and get some cheap comic books. I love going there, guys. And this was a gloomy, rainy day. Me and the kids were looking for something to do, and they were having that big sale, pretty much 20% off everything. And I ended up with a nice little stack of comics. So before I show you what I got, if you like this sort of stuff and you want to support the channel, head on down, hit that like button, and you can also follow me on Instagram under Lunch Money Comics IG. First up, we have one of my favorite characters, Daredevil. This is Daredevil Volume 2, Number 5 from 1999, written by Kevin Smith. Yes, the filmmaker, art by Joe Quesada, and this does have some key issue significance. This is the death of Karen Page. So Karen Page first appeared in Daredevil number 1, and for 4 decades was variously known as the secretary for, Nelson and Murdoch, as well as the love interest of Matt Murdock. A very notable character and obviously very important to Daredevil lore. But in this issue here in 1999, after almost 4 decades of being, in comic books, very much alive, she is killed by the character of Bullseye, arch enemy of Daredevil. And the way that happens is, you see Daredevil's got a baby on his back here. Well, for various reasons I won't get into, Bullseye's trying to find this baby. Karen Page is helping to hide this baby in a church or a shelter, like with the nuns. Bullseye finds out, goes there and starts hurting people. Daredevil steps in and gets his butt whooped. Well, Karen Page is very brave and stands up to Bullseye, and it ends up Bullseye throws Daredevil's baton at Daredevil, and Karen Page steps in and gets hit with the baton, and she dies. And it's very tragic, and unlike other comic book deaths, this one stuck. This was 1999. She has not been brought back in the comics, guys. Most notably, a lot of people know who Karen Page is because of the Netflix series. She was played by Deborah Ann Wall, and she was a fantastic character, one of the main leads. I would say she was probably had the second most screen time after Matt Murdock and Charlie Cox. She's a fantastic actress who did a great portrayal of Karen Page. Wasn't just the damsel in distress at all. Definitely had a lot of agency. She was an awesome character, and she's going to appear in the next season of Daredevil that's going to be Born Again on Disney+. Now, the reason I bring up the television series is because in the 3rd season of that Netflix series, there is a scene that plays out very similar to what happens in this book. Spoiler alert for anyone who has not watched that Netflix series. If maybe you haven't watched it yet and you're waiting for the new Disney series, I don't know, but I'm going to say spoiler alert anyways in 3, 2, 1. In that 3rd season, it plays out very similar. There is no baby, but Bullseye's trying to find Karen Page because Kingpin wants her dead, finds her in the church she's hiding in, hurts a lot of people. Daredevil steps in, gets his butt whooped, and then Bullseye throws Daredevil's baton, just like in the comic book. And I remember watching this at the time thinking, oh no, here it comes. But there's a twist. Instead of Karen Page getting hit with the baton, the priest, Father Lantham, steps in front of her and takes the baton as she lives. Still, guys, it's very, very similar to what happens in this book, and it was kind of a fun little thing that the writers of the show did to subvert the expectations for those of us who know the comics so well. It's still pretty cool, guys, and because of that, this book is very, very notable, especially if you're a Daredevil fan like me. I want to point out there's actually a variant cover of this, which I like a lot better. It's by Joe Quesada and Palmiotti as well, but it shows Daredevil holding Karen Page when she's on the ground dying. So I want that book, definitely, but for a few dollars, which is what I got this for, happy to pick this book up. Absolutely, very cool key issue. I mentioned in the voiceover that I always check the Miscellaneous Comics. You would be surprised how many cool comics end up in there. Not only are there stuff that, the people that work there don't know how to sort, but it gets overlooked all the time. And I saw this book here. This is Chris Claremont Anniversary Special number 1 from 2020. And as a Chris Claremont fan, this jumped out to me right away. And it's actually pretty cool. Chris Claremont wrote a whole bunch of seemingly disparate stories in here about different characters, and then they eventually all come together in the storyline. And all the characters he's writing about are ones he either created or ones that he had a very big hand in fleshing out over, the last, 4 or 5 decades. Not only did he write it, a ton of people, different artists worked on this book, including, I see Bill Sienkiewicz right there. I love him. So I didn't know anything about this, but it jumped up to me, thought I'd pick it up. Oh, one of the characters Chris Claremont created is Gambit, you see right there on the cover, and that's the subject of my next book. This right here. This is X-Men number 163 from 2004. And this isn't actually a key issue, but it's a little bit of a cool story involving Gambit, which I kind of alluded to in a previous video. So in the early 2000s, Gambit was having kind of a tough time. After this, he'd eventually become, the Horseman of Death for Apocalypse. He has trouble with his relationship with Rogue. But even before all that, he ends up getting blinded. So this was written by Chuck Austin, who I've mentioned on my channel in the past before, and I try to stay positive on this channel, guys, and not say negative things about my favorite comic titles, but I've said it before and I'll say it again. Chuck Austin, to me, is the worst X-Men writer of all time. I hated his run on Uncanny X-Men, so you'd be surprised I even wanted to pick up his attempt on the adjectiveless X-Men title. But here's the thing, he only actually penned 8 issues of the regular X-Men title, 2 4-issue story arcs. But immediately he tries shaking things up by blinding Gambit. What happens is the X-Men are in a battle with some bad guys. I think what happens is, Rogue hits one of the bad guys, their gun goes off and hits Gambit's card as he's charging it. It blows up in his face and he's blinded. And he kind of blames Rogue for it, even though it had nothing to do with her whatsoever. And he's blind and it stinks. But to make matters even worse, when he takes his blindfold off and tries to see and he looks at his cards, they tried giving him like precognition, like his cards kind of look like tarot cards and he can like read into them. I don't really know what they were trying to do, but it didn't really matter because Chuck Austen left after 8 issues and then they just reversed it and never talked about it again. Okay, that's pretty much the extent of it, but I like this cover by Salvador Larroca. That's true. I think it's actually pretty cool, so that's why I wanted this book, and I want to talk about it on the channel. So, didn't love the Chuck Austen run, but pretty cool cover. Fun little footnote in Gambit's history. I mentioned this book briefly. This is Secret Wars 7 of the Hickman run in 2015. Very famous storyline that the Secret Wars movies will presumably be based on. I said it in the voiceover, guys. I try to collect, whole sets of these storylines, and I have pretty much all I need for a second set of these, except for issue 7 and 9. Found issue 7, happy to finish another set. This one's really cool, guys. I'm a big fan of this one. This is Captain Marvel number 41 from 1975, written by Steve Englehart, art by Al Milgrom. Al Milgrom also helped script this, and this is actually known as one of the cameo appearances of one of the Infinity Gems. And I say gems, not stones, because that's what they're known as in the comics. They're Infinity Gems. Yeah, this is actually the first cameo appearance of the Mind Gem. It appears only in one little panel at the very end of the book, but it's still pretty cool. Now, what's going on with this book? Well, we have Captain Marvel, Captain Marvel, and we also have Rick Jones, who's sort of like the everyman of the Marvel Universe, has been involved with not only Captain Marvel, but also the Incredible Hulk, of course. And because of comic books, they end up having to basically converge their bodies. Their bodies sort of like come together into one being, and their consciousness is in both. Very, very, very strange. Well, in this comic book here, which also involves the Supreme Intelligence of the Kree and Ronan the Accuser, they're struggling with this identity crisis. At the end of this, you're introduced very briefly to that Mind Stone, and in later issues, they use that Mind Stone to help them sort out their multiple personalities and split them apart. Because comics. Now, while Avengers Annual number 7 is known as the first issue that has all 6 Infinity Gems, a lot of those stones did appear in earlier issues, like this one. I was also looking for that Marvel team-up that I didn't find. So they're kind of fun. I thought it'd be a fun little hunting exercise to dig up each of those little kind of cameo appearances of the stones. But there you go, guys. First cameo appearance of the Mind Stone. Thought it was a fun thing to pick up. Also, just a great, great Al Milgrom cover, right? Which brings me to my last book. So you saw in the footage there was a glass case that they keep the nicer books in. Well, there was some pretty awesome ones in there. I saw that House of Secrets number 92, first appearance of the Swamp Thing, a book I've wanted for a long time. I'd love to have that book. And I also thought for its grade, it was priced pretty well even before the sale. And if it wasn't for the fact that I bought some big books recently and spent some money, guys, I was definitely, would have been thinking about it. But I don't have the money for it right now, but maybe that's a target for next year. But while I was in this case, I did see a couple of other comic books that I definitely wanted, including a Spider-Man book that is perfect for my collection. And it's this. This is Peter Parker, The Spectacular Spider-Man number 90 from 1984. Again, a fantastic Al Milgrom cover. And this is known as one of the first appearances of Spider-Man's black suit. But to really explain that, we need to go into a little bit of a dive into the history of Spider-Man's black suit because it is super complicated. So let's actually start with this book. So this is, of course, Secret Wars number 8. This actually came out later in 1984, and this is the origin of the black suit. In this issue here, you see how Spider-Man comes across the black suit, the symbiote that would later be known as Venom, while he's in space during the events of Secret Wars. This happens later in 1984, but chronologically happens before all of the other appearances of the black suit. In other words, you see Spider-Man in the black suit and you don't find out how he got it until here. So now let's go back earlier into 1984, where we get to this book. So this is The Amazing Spider-Man number 252. It's cover dated May 1984, and that is important. Remember that. And this is usually described as the first real appearance of the black suit. Now, there was a preview appearance of Spider-Man's black suit in Amazing Heroes number 35, sort of like a fanzine. That's, again, a preview, doesn't really count. In comic books, this is the first one usually. And it's also, for my money, the best one. It's an homage to Amazing Fantasy 15. It's an awesome comic book and iconic, and it is great. But here's where things get complicated because, like I said, it's cover dated May 1984. Do you want to know what else is cover dated May 1984? This book. Marvel Team Up number 141. This is a team up between Spider-Man and Daredevil, two of my favorites. And as you can see right there on the cover, it's Spider-Man in the black suit. And they see even here, this is where the new Spider-Man takes over. So even then, they're billing him as the new black suit as Spider-Man. So it's a cool book. Cover dated May 1984. Want to know what else is cover dated May 1984? That's right, the book I just picked up, Spectacular Spider-Man number 90. Also cover dated May 1984. And although Spider-Man is not in the black suit on this awesome Al Milgrom cover, he is in the black suit on the inside, and it even describes the fact that his red and blue suit is ruined. So, which one actually is the first appearance of Spider-Man in the black suit? Well, there actually is kind of an answer here. So I think we can rule this one out, although it is an iconic black suit book you should absolutely have in your collection. It really comes down to these three. And although they are cover dated May 1984, that doesn't mean they were released then. I think most people know books are released before their actual cover date. And as it so happens, this one came out first. This one actually was released in January of 1984, and these ones came out a few weeks later. So, the definitive answer of what is the first published black suit Spider-Man, it is Amazing Spider-Man number 252. But if you want to collect the first appearances of Spider-Man in the black suit, there's a much simpler solution than having to choose between these books, and that is to get them all. That was my philosophy. You know, I had the other 3 books. I did not yet have this one. They're pretty awesome, and I think it's a fun little collection of 4 books to have. Head on down to the comments, guys, and let me know which one of these covers you like the best. I know which one I like the best, but I'd love to hear all of your opinions. So how much did all of this cost me? Like I said, most of the comics in the store were 20% off, and I got all of these for a little over $30, which I think is a pretty great deal. Not only did I finish my Black Suit Spider-Man collection, I got some other great reading material and a great Daredevil key as well. Head on down to the comments, let me know what you think of all my pickups. Which one do you like the best, and do you think I paid a fair price? And in the meantime, keep hunting for comic books in strange and unusual places. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.